Welcome back into the Dynasty Nerds YouTube page. I'm Garret Price, and it's time to get a little mad. All right, as I mentioned, it is March Madness time, and I'm looking at my bracket, which I'm sure is about to be busted. As soon as I finish this video, I'll realize that two of my final four teams are out of it or something crazy like that. But it got me thinking about fantasy football and specifically the draft. And because that's what I love to cover the draft. I love to talk about these prospects. And I'm kind of rounding into receivers, but I still am holding on to my running backs. And I thought, what if we did a running backs episode where instead of seeds of NCAA teams, we put in running back names? And we're going to randomize it as we go. And we'll use the 1 seed to get like 16 points and the 16 seed to get 1 point. And it'll go that way all through the tournament. And as I go, whatever happens, I'm going to have to justify it. I'm going to have to explain why this player could actually be better than the player that they were going against in the bracket. So whatever this tells me, that's what I got to go with. And part of this, I want to make sure I give credit where credit is due. Noah Hills on Twitter at Noah More Parties. He did something with a spinner and he had to talk about top 5 guys. So it was a good little inspiration in the back of my mind of thinking how something like this could work. So I'm going to dig into it right now. I'm going to get into this top 16. In fact, actually here, I'll show you the bracket. Here are how I seeded them. Now, these are not necessarily my particular top 16, but I went with what I thought would be pretty close to like a consensus top 16. There might be a little bit of my own bias in here, but I wanted to make sure I got the names in of, the bigger names up high, the lesser name guys down low, blah, 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 blah. So that's what I'm doing here. And yeah, let's get into it. Okay, let's start off with the favorite, Breece Hall against Abram Smith. 16 against a 1 here. Let's see what we got. And Breece Hall. Okay, that was the expected outcome on this. All right, Breece Hall beat Abram Smith. Not really a surprise. Breece Hall is a significantly better running back. He's going to have better draft capital. This isn't a hard one to imagine, so I don't feel like I need to explain myself as to why this is the most likely scenario. It was a 116. Breece Hall won. It's how it should go. All right, let's get the number 2 seed Isaiah Spiller against the number 15 seed Devontae Price. We'll put the numbers in, and we have the first upset. Devontae Price over Isaiah Spiller. Okay, let me think about how to rationalize this one. I didn't expect an upset quite this early, but we're going to figure out a way to make this work. And Devontae Price. I like Devontae Price. I would actually probably have him maybe even slightly higher than my RB15. This is tough, though, because Isaiah Spiller, I mean, he's going to have the draft capital. He's going to be, a second round, at worst, third round guy, I would assume. But Isaiah Spiller didn't look great at the combine. And maybe that athleticism really isn't there. And Devontae Price is just a superior athlete. We know he's better in the pass protection game. We know he has better long speed. So we're going to say that Devontae Price ends up on a team where he actually gets to work some in on third downs because he's fine in the pass receiving game, but he especially produces well in pass protection. And so shows off a little bit. He's got that prototypical size. Couple things happen. He could easily sneak and take on a role of maybe not necessarily a featured back, but a lead back in a situation. Whereas Isaiah Spiller, there's a scenario where he's just not a good enough athlete to get it done. He doesn't pass protect well enough. He doesn't do the little things well enough where he flames out after a couple years. So we're going to have Devontae Price moving on here in our tournament. All right, let's move over to Kenneth Walker here. Ty Chandler. Some would argue Kenneth Walker's being seated a little too low here. But let's see if he can pull off. Yeah. All right. So he did his job, beat Ty Chandler in the first round. All right. So we get back to some sort of normalcy here with Kenneth Walker beating Ty Chandler. I like Ty Chandler. He had over 1,000 yards this past year. But Kenneth Walker, after transferring from Wake Forest, showed what kind of back he really, truly is. He's a guy that's going to make you miss in a phone booth. Really, really good feet, strong lower half. And he showed well in the receiving game at the combine. And that was one of the biggest question marks was, is he going to be able to do well in the receiving game? And I don't think it was just something he can't do. They just didn't use him in that capacity. So he signs on with the team and he ends up getting a good role on first and second down, but even gets used third down a little bit more than we think. And he ends up being the better back out of him and Ty Chandler. All right, let's move over to a guy that no one would have thought would have been the 4 seed except for, well, maybe me. Before all of this, Zamir White going up against the Alabama running back, Brian Robinson Jr. And let's see. Oh, please be Zamir. Yes, okay, easy one to justify here. Zamir White, one of my favorite players in this class. I had him as a top 5 guy for a while, and most people told me I was crazy. Post-combine, this dude running a 4.4. A lot of people are coming back saying, oh, well, maybe he's maybe he is a top 5 guy. Maybe he's not as bad as people thought. I'm going to have to go check the tape because I don't know if he is. He's that good. He's a good running back. Yes, he's not special in the receiving game, but there is a reason he was a 5-star guy. There's a reason he was a guy that put up over 2,000 rushing yards in his career at Georgia. He's a good player. He's going to end up in a good situation, and he's going to produce as a lead back in a committee somewhere, and I am here for it. Let's move over to our 5-12 matchup between Kyren Williams, Tyler Algier, 2 guys that have lost a little bit of steam since the combine. And we have the higher seed moving on, Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams is the opposite of Zamir White. He did not show well at the combine, but once again, great receiving back. He does a lot of things well, and Tyler Algier, he's fine. He's fine, but he's not the most agile. He's not the fastest, and I think people were really disappointed. People really thought he was going to run a good time in the 40. They really thought he was going to be more explosive than he was, and he's just not an explosive athlete at all, especially playing against the lower competition. There wasn't enough of true domination for me to say that he's going to be better than Kyren Williams, and it worked out well here because I don't have to try to justify that. Here's where it could get interesting. We could have a lot of upsets at this point. These 6-11 matchups, we got Dameon Pierce, James Cook. Dameon Pierce moves on. No upset here. Dameon Pierce, James Cook. James Cook is rising up a lot of people's boards, but our boy Dameon Pierce edged him out in our nerd score right now. He's actually ranked as the 4th running back overall. I would have him somewhere right around here, right around 6 currently. But for some reason, he just wasn't really used at Florida. It's an odd thing. So if you look at the stat sheet, you're going to be puzzled. Like, why is Dameon Pierce, like, why do people love him so much? Looked really, really good at the Senior Bowl. Really good between the tackles. He's got good vision, great strength. That size, over 220 pounds at his frame is just, it's a beautiful thing. He's moving on to our Elite 8. 7 seed Jerome Ford. 7 seed Rashad White. 10 seed Jerome Ford. They're so close together. We've got Rashad White moving on here in this one. All right, after the Devontae Price, we haven't really had a ton of upsets. I thought we might see one here with Jerome Ford edging out Rashad White, but Rashad White moves on. Guy's got quick feet. He was a JUCO transfer, ended up at Arizona State, got used more and more over the past 2 years, and this year he really got to show out. Looked fantastic in the receiving game. There's some work he could do with his route running and things like that, but very natural catcher of the football, got really quick feet, and he's got the good size that you want. So I'm not quite sure. I think he's one of the biggest boom bust prospects in the class, but he edges out Jerome Ford, who we know is a speed guy. He can get things done, the Alabama transfer. Rashad White edges him out here. Just like the NCAA tournament, 8-9 seeds, it's not really an upset. Tyler Beatty, Pierre Strong. I have Beatty higher. Some people really like Strong, but here we have Tyler Beatty moving on. So no upsets here late. Tyler Beatty, Pierre Strong. I was rooting for Beatty here. Beatty's a guy that I keep wanting to get inside my top 5. with him being a smaller guy and more than likely going to be a third down type of back, it was tough for me to really justify getting him in my top 5. But I'm glad to see that he moves on here. He's going to be facing off against Breece Hall in the second round, so we'll see how that goes. I will have a hard time justifying that one if he pulls it out, but explosive player, absolutely explosive player. Didn't get a lot of run early in his career, but later on, he got the full workload in this past season. He went from a guy that was just using spots here and there to over 1,600 yards rushing in the SEC on Missouri. It's not like he had this incredible offensive line that was blocking for him. So there's a lot to like here with Tyler Beatty. And it just wouldn't surprise me if he shocks the world and ends up being a very, very productive NFL running back. All right, we are now into the second round. We are into the Elite Eight. We've got Breece Hall, who is still the clear favorite in my mind. But with these odds, you never know what could happen. Tyler Beatty could easily upset here. But it would make my life so much easier if I could just justify Breece Hall as the top guy. So I'm kind of hoping that it works out that way. But upsets are fun too. So let's see. We're going to submit this. And we have Breece Hall moving on. Another situation here where the superior player gets to move on. We haven't had a ton of upsets so far, but in the first round of the Elite Eight, the better player goes through. Breece Hall is in a tier of his own. And as much as I like Beatty, he just doesn't have the size to be able to compete with a guy like Breece Hall. Breece Hall is the superior runner, and he is moving on to our final 4. All right, this one works out 5-4 matchup. Zamir's the 4 seed. Kyren Williams is the 5 seed. I could argue either one of these. So this one worked out pretty nice in my favor overall. But I obviously want Zamir to go through. I have him ranked higher personally, but let's see how this works out. And Zamir White moved on again. Let's go. Zamir's moving on again. Zamir is a Final 4 guy in our March Madness bracket. He's once again, we're talking about a player that is a superior athlete over Kyren Williams, which is not a surprise. Before the combine, we knew that Kyren Williams wasn't this fantastic athlete. But Zamir White does get to move on. We saw what he did early on in his career as he started to recover from those ACL injuries. He's looking more and more explosive, and he's getting more and more explosive up our rankings and up our bracket as well. All right, we have Kenneth Walker and Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce, 6 seed. Kenneth Walker, 3 seed. Once again, I know some people think he should be higher, blah, 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 blah. But Kenneth Walker, if he advances here, this will be an interesting matchup in the Final 4. If not, Dameon Pierce, I have him. This isn't my exact rankings, but I think a lot of people have him around 5 or 6 overall. So let's see. Oh, Pierce moved on. Okay, another upset. We've been waiting for one. Ooh, upset city here. Kenneth Walker goes down, the Michigan State star. We finally have another juicy upset here. Dameon Pierce moves on. And basically what would have to happen in this situation here is some of the things that I worry about a little bit with Kenneth Walker is everybody exclaims about his vision. And I think that there is some truth to that at the second level. But at the line, there's actually some times where you see him not make the right choice, maybe process things a little slow for some of that outside zone stuff, and maybe just the hands really don't develop. I think those would be the things that would have to happen in order for him to not succeed and Dameon Pierce to be the more effective running back at the NFL level. This matchup terrifies me because as much as I like Devontae Price, and I think I like him more than most people, I'd probably have him even higher than 15, trying to justify him over Pierce, who just won, Zamir, Breece, like I just don't know how I'm going to be able to do it and sound somewhat intelligent. So this matchup right here is honestly terrifying for me. But even White, like I actually have White a little bit lower than 7. These are just kind of the general rankings. I've mentioned that before, but I don't know how this is going to play out. But White I can at least somewhat justify. Let's see. That does make my life a little bit easier there. Okay. All right, well, Devontae Price's Cinderella run stopped quite a bit short. It was fun while it lasted, but Rachaad White, Arizona State, is moving on into our final four. I don't think it's going to take a lot of explaining here to believe that Rachaad White is the more superior player. He had better production. He did it at a bigger university, and I think he's going to get better draft capital. So Rachaad White moving into our final four. This matchup is fascinating because, and not in a great way actually, because one of two things are going to happen. Either Breece wins, and it's kind of boring. That means there's not like many upsets. Or Zamir White wins, and people think I'm just a guy that loves Zamir White, which is not necessarily wrong. So there's going to be some homerism either way. Zamir moving on to the ship. Okay, here we go. Zamir White. Let's see how this goes. What? All right. Breece Hall. I mean, the odds were that, I guess it's not the odds, but I knew that there was a chance that this could happen, where the number one seed would go down, and I'm going to have to justify Zamir White over Breece Hall. And I think the way that this is a possibility, and granted, Breece Hall is in a tier of his own in my real rankings, but for this exercise, Zamir White ran a 4.440. He is an explosive player. We didn't see a ton of long runs, but I think if he is going to be effective at the next level, I think he's going to get the rock more. He really only had a very few games where he had at or over 15 carries in a single game. So he's a guy that I think needs to get in a rhythm. And if a team feeds him the ball over and over and over, I think we're going to see a rhythm, and we're going to see big gashes. We're going to see long plays, long touchdowns. There were a few of them. So let's not pretend like there weren't any, but I think that's where he's going to have to show that he can be that type of player at the next level to be a more effective running back than Breece Hall. So we're just going to pretend like, for this scenario, Breece Hall is like the second or third best running back in college or in the NFL, which he's a Final Four guy. That makes sense. But Zamir White just barely edges him out at the next level. 6-7 matchup in the Final Four. Pierce, White. These are two guys that I don't see necessarily getting in my top five, but they have a case to be made, but at least makes this tournament interesting because both guys are definitely dark horses for people. So it's going to be interesting, but we have a lot of the favorites out of it now. And we have, moving on from this side, Rachaad White. It's going to be a white Christmas. All right, Pierce, White, guys at 6, at 7. We now have a 4 and a 7 in the finale. So we have Rachaad White. We have Zamir White. In the finale. It's an interesting showdown between these two players because they do things, even though they both have good size, they do things a little bit differently. Rachaad White, you can flex him out. We've seen him flexed out as a receiver, can do things between the tackles, wins more with really good feet. I think that's really where he's effective. Zamir White, it's more about power, more about strength, more about being decisive. So White's going to make a couple guys miss, make a couple moves. It's going to be one cut and go. He's going to be more of that, for Zamir, he's more of that. Think of Nick Chubb stylistically, not saying he's going to be as talented as Nick Chubb at the next level, but stylistically, think more Nick Chubb type of player who also played at Georgia. So they win differently, even though they have similar size. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Championship round, Rachaad White, Zamir White. One guy I want to win, one guy I actually don't want to win. I've probably made that clear so far. Zamir White. Haters are going to say it's fake. Haters are going to say it's fake, but it happened. Zamir White, the greatest running back in the class, the greatest running back of all time. Zamir White, there it is, done and done. Goodbye, folks. Well, that is quite the note to end on. Zamir White, greatest running back of all time in the history of the world. But with that, I wish I would have had more time to be able to go into each player individually, deeper, more analysis, more stats, more analytics, more tape scores, all of that kind of stuff. But if you want all of that, go to dynastynerds.com, become part of the Nerd Herd. We're about to be doing all of our rookie breakdowns on the podcast. That's right. We go like 30 players deep at running back, 30, 40, 50 players deep. Like, we go crazy deep at every single position. Guys that are going to be 7th rounders, undrafted guys. We cover it all there. So go to the Dynasty Nerds podcast. And on top of that, while you do that, why don't you check out prizepicks.com? That's right. Prize Picks. When you use the promo code NERDS, you get the opportunity to get a deposit match up to $100. That means you put in $20 at Prize Picks, you get $20 for free. You put in $100, you get $100 for free. And what you get to do there is you get to pick some overs and unders of some different players that you like. And it doesn't even have to be football. It could be a futures thing, like for Patrick Mahomes, will he throw over 4,700 yards or under 4,700 yards? Or in tomorrow night's game, will Jimmy Butler score over 28 points or under 28 points? Those are the types of things you get to do at prizepicks.com. So check them out and use promo code NERDS. We'll see you next time.